Welcome, paranormal enthusiasts, to this week's episode of We're Creepin It Reel, here on the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network, where everyone comes for their paranormal fix. Real people, real stories, in real time. So glad you could join us for some ghostly gab. I'm your host, Eleanor Wagner. As always, I appreciate you hitting the subscribe tab, follow button, or show app of your podcast of choice. Everybody give a hello shout out to our coast to coast techie, Chris Mabry. He'll be working hard tonight to help us run smoothly. I got some great news. Coast to Coast Entertainment Network is now on Amazon. That's right. If you as a listener have this wonderful app, you can watch all Coast to Coast's live programming directly from the app, and you can even go back and watch previous episodes. If you don't already have the app, I suggest you go and get it. But wait until after tonight's show, because you don't want to miss what I have in store for you. I'm so excited to introduce tonight's guest because she owns a haunted Air BNB located in Jackson, California. The building itself is not the least bit daunting. In fact, it has quite a charm and elegance. Chris is going to put up those pictures for you. Situated in historic Amador County, which is renowned for its gold mining and rich fertile soil that grows the finest wine grapes, Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home is situated in the heart of Jackson with amazing destinations to explore at one's fingertips. The house dates back to the 1870s and is definitely haunted with a very colorful past, which my guest was able to unearth through her extensive research. Please join me in welcoming Elsie Lodde.
Hey there,
Welcome.
welcome.
Thank you.
Chris did put up the pictures of the house
for
for
the
the
listeners
listeners
to
to
see.
see.
Did you
Did you
know
know
the
the
house
house
was
was
haunted
haunted
before
before
you
you
purchased
purchased
it?
it?
I did not. I didn't actually know a lot about the area when I purchased the house. So I didn't know that the area is kind of known for being haunted. But realized that the house was haunted when I did my final walkthrough.
Weren't they supposed to disclose that information to you?
Yes, California does have a law. They should have disclosed. It would be considered a stigmatized property. So it should have been disclosed to me. But basically, the real estate agent, when I was talking to her, she was telling me that the woman whose dad owned the house, for 60 years, that she kept trying to tell her stories about it, and she kept telling her she didn't want to hear it because then she'd have to disclose it. But they were the property management company for the renters who lived here, so there's no way they didn't know, but it was not disclosed.
That's terrible because it puts you in a very difficult position. Thankfully, you thought about this wonderful idea of inviting paranormal enthusiasts in, and that probably was a saving grace for you, but not so nice
Yeah,
for them to have done.
it's definitely a lot more work having an Airbnb versus I bought it to be a long-term rental. And so it's a lot more work having to worry about turning over and, answering questions and the customer service, all that stuff versus, you get somebody moved in for a year or two and don't really have to do too much unless there's a problem. So it's definitely a lot more work that I was not anticipating. So
I'll bet.
that's probably the most frustrating part, I guess. I don't know. I want to be annoyed or upset about the ghost, but I realistically, I think if I had known, I probably still would have bought the house. So I don't know that it would have mattered.
Okay. Well,
Well, you mentioned to me that your house can make people really sick. Are there spirits selective with who they make sick?
So oftentimes people, when they the second they walk through the front door, they'll kind of get that nausea, heaviness, dizziness. That's pretty common when you go to haunted locations. But there has been a couple of times where people have gotten very sick and had to leave. Um, one time, it's only happened twice actually, but I feel like the house knows who I would like and who I wouldn't like, and they will chase off people I don't like, or they're mean to people I wouldn't like. So I didn't know I wouldn't have liked this guy when he was here for a paranormal investigation. I didn't know anything about him, and literally he was sweating. His like heart rate was off. He was nauseous. He had a headache. He had all this stuff, but it wasn't like, oh, it's a paranormal issue. Like the group he was with, they were like, you need to go to the ER because they were worried he was having a heart attack. And so they made him leave, and he got about halfway home because we're about an hour out of Sacramento where I live. And so he got about halfway home when he started feeling better. And when they, when I, the next, like a couple days later, I went to send him a message on Facebook to be like, hey, sorry about that. Like, apologize that the spirits were mean to him. And when I did that, I went to his Facebook page and I realized I wouldn't want to talk to this person. So based on his social media posts, I was like, nope, this is not something I would be friends with. And so I didn't even respond. And so I'm like, wait, is that why they got rid of him? Is because they knew I wouldn't like him. So there's been some weird connections like that before.
Cool. Well, I gather you do have a lot of visitors from the paranormal arena now that it's clear that it's haunted. Television shows, I believe you said. How long has this been going on now that the paranormal people have been coming?
So I bought the house in May, but I didn't start working on it until July. And the first people who came through the house was a paranormal group. But then I didn't really have anything going on. And so it's only been this year, I think since May of this year, that I started having paranormal groups come through. I only turned it into an Airbnb in February. Okay. So it's, not been a super long time. So usually I get a couple a month that come.
A couple of months?
It's been, but we're new, so not everybody has been here before, so it's a little bit easier, but there has been, so we had like a couple in June, a couple in July, like it's, it's trickling out a little bit more because there's less groups around here, or well, just in general, there's a lot less travel going on locally. But yeah, we have more to come. So
when did you discover who the spirits are?
It's been a process. I still don't know who they all are. The first spirit I realized was in the house during my final walkthrough was one that's in the front bedroom in the closet. And when I had that first paranormal group come out, I wasn't with them. I was actually in the basement with a group down in the basement, and they were in that bedroom, and they talked to her for like 2 hours because they were so excited to talk to people that it was going on and on. And then when we went to switch, it was done. There was no energy left in this house. There was no more communicating with us. But, and they said her name was Bethany, and that's why I named the house Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home. It was after her. And then like I knew where spirits were, but trying to like place them was a little bit more, more difficult. I didn't know who they were. And I have my unfinished part of my basement is kind of creepy down there. There's like this one section that's particularly creepy. And we were down there one day. It was a paranormal investigator who works for the county. So I went in, I met her when I was getting my business's license and all that stuff set up. And so she wanted to come check it out. Well, so she went down into the basement, and the first thing she asked is, what's your name? And he said, Steve. And I was like, who's Steve? And I started thinking about it because she had given me a list of all the owners' names, and I had gone and started doing some research, but didn't have a lot of luck. And so then I was like, oh, Steve. Okay. And then when I pulled up Steve's, his family, his history, I got so much information. And so from there, Steve has a daughter who's still alive. Like I said, she's in her late 80s. And I was speaking to her. And eventually she told me that her mom is here, her dad is here, her sister's here, and her brother-in-law is here. And so that at first I thought she was just like throwing a temper tantrum. Because she's like, fine, they're all there. My mom's there, my dad's there, my sister's there, like they're all there. And so I thought she was throwing a temper tantrum, but that gave us like Okay, well, let's ask. Like, are you Linda? And then the K2 would light up, and so then it started like making more sense and so people they work really well with like K2s and dowsing rods and even like the necrophonics app. That's how Steve told us his name works really well in this house. So they're pretty good about communicating with us. And so but there's some other spirits that I don't know who they are. Like there's one named Sam. I have no idea who he is. There's a grumpy woman who's in the room right behind me. On the other side of that bookcase, I have no idea who she is. So there's some that I don't know who they are, and then there's some I know who they are. And in particular, this one family that I have,
which is the Tuffanelli.
Yeah, the Tuffanellis, yeah.
And you said that there's this very colorful past. Would you tell us about that?
Sure. I mean, by the lens of 2022, it is not that interesting, right? But it's pretty scandalous. Like back in the 1920s and 30s, what was going on was pretty scandalous. So Steve was not married, although the newspaper said they were married. They weren't, to a woman named Maria. And they ran a boarding house. They were bootlegging gambling. So they got arrested several times for bootlegging and gambling. But in this, basically we're in a gold mine town. So the miners would bring gold that they stole from the mine, right? And they were gambling. They were, buying their booze, their bootlegged booze. They were boarding and would pay them with it. So they took it, they're melting it down and putting it into coins, mailing it to Maria's niece, who used a fake name and took it to the mint to sell them. After 11 weeks, the mint was like, where's this woman getting all this really good quality gold? And they started doing an investigation and they were all arrested for basically, it's called high grading, but it's basically conspiracy to sell stolen gold to the government because Maria had said basically like the miners only get $4 a day. You can't expect them not to steal it. And so by saying that, she was acknowledging that the gold was stolen. Steve got sent to 18 months in Leavenworth. So he went off to Leavenworth, but 15 months into his stint, the Supreme Court overruled it and let him back out. So him and Maria ended up getting married like a year later. She used a fake name when they got married. I don't know why, maybe just because didn't want it known that they were already living, because it was illegal actually to live together and not be married. Technically, although people probably ignored it a lot. And then in 1933, he had a baby. Her name is Linda. So she's still here with Marilda, who's also still here, but he was not divorced from Maria. And I don't have any record of them ever getting married. They finally got divorced. Maria and him ended up getting divorced 2 years later. And then a couple years later, he was back in jail for high grading again. This time it was for selling over $300,000 worth of gold in 1939, which would be the equivalent to almost $7 million today. So right after the end of the Depression. But this time he only got 6 months in county jail and a $500 fine. No, $1,000 fine. Everybody got off scot-free. Only him and one other person got the fines because of their past criminal history. So he spent 6 months in county jail that time. So again, the house was a gambling hall. It was the first owner, it was a brothel before them. But so while he owned it, though, it was they did gambling. They had a saloon downstairs, and it was a boarding house. So there were murders here. One just because drunk guys looking for fights. One was a love triangle. So yeah, we have all sorts of kind of like history that like goes into it. Now,
Sam and the grumpy old lady might have something to do with that.
Or they might just be visiting. But yeah, it's possible because they could be boarders. I mean, or they could be, sex workers because I only have the list of the people who owned the property. I don't know all the people who came in and out over the years. I do know of some of the ones who died here just because like in the newspaper articles, the Toffanelli's name's mentioned. So I had a guy named Michael who lived here for 5 days, went fishing with Steve's two brothers and accidentally drowned. Seems questionable to me. but okay. We have another one where, we had, miners that had died in the mine. I mean, miners died all the time. Apparently, they fell down the shafts a lot. I'm not sure why. But that was the thing. And so we had two who died that, and one of them, he broke his neck, and they brought him back here instead of taking him straight to the hospital. Probably because the house across the street was the doctor's house. So they just thought, oh, I'll just take him back home because, the doctor can come here. And he ended up dying because there's not a lot you can do, back then. So, yeah, so there's been all sorts of like deaths that have happened here. But yeah, we don't know who all of those people are. And of course, they might have nothing to do with this property at all. There's all sorts of deaths that happened between the mines and everything else around here. Like, I have an article 2 doors down. The woman was leaning over the porch talking to the neighbor next door, fell over and landed on her head and died. So it's like all sorts of fun accidents, strange accidents would happen. I was shocked to find out that one of the women who lived here had to have her leg amputated as a child, but she survived. Like, how? Without antibiotics. No drugs, no antibiotics. How did this child survive to adulthood? I don't know, but she did.
Wow. I found it pretty cool that you found those tombstones in the cemetery.
Well, it's only 800 feet away.
Oh, okay.
It's easy to find. Yeah, so I have all of the tombstone. I went and searched for all of their tombstones of everybody that I knew who lived and died here, just so that way I can, pay respect to them. But yeah, they're literally, I am 700 feet from the cemetery. So they're super close to us.
Wow.
Yeah, this is my binder of research, so you can see how thick it is.
Wow.
Of all the everything from the deeds and all those articles, those newspaper articles that I have on my website and stuff. So this is a whole binder full of all of the research that I have done with obituaries and murders and everything I can find. William Holder drowned.
If other stuff pops up along the way over time,
Yeah. And I still do find stuff. It's just a matter of I just have to keep checking, like going further on, using different names and search, said, who would have known? Because when I looked for Stefano, I had nothing. Nothing came up. But then when I started looking, I got his obituary. And then when I started searching for Steve, all of this stuff started coming out. And so I started like piecing together the history. So in a lot of ways, I say I feel like he's family, which he said, no, I wasn't. But he said we're friends. So I guess I will take that.
That's good. Well, then you said you went to your favorite restaurant and you noticed a picture of your main spirit hanging on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was so weird. I've been in there so many times and I've never seen it. And it was my birthday weekend and I had friends in town. And so we were staying here for my weekend or for my birthday, walked down there. Of course, when I go to my favorite place on my birthday, went into the bathroom, came out to meet them. And I was like walking out and all of a sudden it just like slapped me. And I didn't know what he looked like when he was young. So I don't know what it was that was like, hello, like bright light. And I was like, what is that? And so shockingly, found a picture of Steve when he was young, working at a bar.
Oh my goodness. He's going to put the picture up for us to see of him behind that bar. And the reason why you knew it is because it said the Tofanelli Brothers Saloon. So
yeah,
I'm assuming he had owned that saloon at that time, and that's why he's there, right?
Yeah, so they owned the saloons until, so prostitution was still going on in Jackson until 1955. Prostitution and gambling. And at that point in time, the Attorney General, who would have been Pat Brown Sr., came in with his agents and shut everything down. At that time, Steve's brother was the chief of police. So Steve owned that bar, but Steve was not, he was never naturalized because he had a criminal record. I mean, he came here in 1911. He didn't try to become a citizen until 1952. By then, he already had this criminal record, so the United States denied him. And in order to have a liquor license, you have to be a citizen. So they basically, when his brother became chief of police, they basically gave the bar, they put it under their third brother's name, and he doesn't, I don't know. He doesn't really show up a lot. So I don't really know that he had a lot going on for him. He definitely wasn't getting in trouble for bootlegging and gambling, but they put the bar in his name. even though they were still running it. And so when the prostitution bus came down, he got in trouble for taking bribes, for ignoring the brothels all over town, and letting him thrive. And so at that point in time, the locals, like the city government, they didn't care. They let him still be the chief of police. I mean, there was a trial, but they're just like, yeah, whatever. Like they let it go, and he was the chief of police for another 10 years. But the state, the only recourse they had to kind of like punish them was they came in and they took away the bar.
Well, that explains it.
Yeah.
Ah. Well, you sent me a series of photographs from the night of the 100th year anniversary of the Argonaut mine disaster, the worst gold mining disaster in California history, which took place in 1922, when 47 miners were trapped in a fire 4,650 feet below ground. And you mentioned that the night was like the most hectic and active with Spirit One for you, nonstop, in fact, until you told the Spirit she needed to go to bed. Let's go through those pictures one at a time so you can explain them to the listeners. The first one is this hand picture. What's going on there?
So that wasn't from that night, but this handprint just appeared one day on the fridge in the kitchen. And like we had been in the kitchen, I cooked food a couple days later, came back, went in there first thing in the morning. I was like, what is this? Now I've tried to recreate that because it's stainless steel. So I've gotten my hand wet and I've put it on there trying to make a handprint, and I've been unable to do that. So I'm not really sure how that happens. But if you look at it, there's only 4 fingers, which is a little bit disturbing.
So, do you think that that's an elemental?
I do. I think that at the time, I just thought we had kids. And because I had a footprint appear before, I assumed that, okay, well, I don't really know why there'd be kids in this house, short of, sex workers have kids. I do know of one child who died at 2 years, 7 months, but the footprint was like this big and that handprint was like that big. And so that doesn't match. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe we have multiple children in here. Well, now I think, no, it's actually, we don't have children in here at all. It's just elementals, but they are kind of problematic. They like to steal things and make noise and play with toys and do all sorts of stuff. So they kind of seem like children, but they're not. You're muted.
Can you tell the listening audience what an elemental is? I'm sorry, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, sure. So elementals are spirits that are not earthbound. They're not human. They are attached to the land. So the most common thing for us in like European culture and history, we think of fairies, pixies, gnomes, elves, mermaids. So a mermaid would be a water elemental. So pixies, I don't know what they're all listed as. And so a story I have is that the property next door used to be a hotel that Steve also managed. And he made some good money there too. But it burned down in 1931 and they built a quadplex. And one of the people living there now, she is a practicing witch. And she was telling me a story that she said that, oh yeah, I had this pixie, and I had to get rid of it, or a fairy. I think maybe I don't remember. She said a fairy or a pixie, and I was just thinking, like at first, like in order to get rid of this all this activity that's happening in my house, I had to get rid of this thing, and I thought she was talking about like she had a haunted object, like she had a statue of a fairy that was haunted, and so the stuff was happening, so she got rid of it, and that stopped. And it wasn't until the second time she said it that I was like, oh, you're serious? Like you had a fairy in your house? And I was like, oh, okay. Like I literally didn't know that like people thought those were real. Like, so it wasn't that I just didn't believe. I didn't even know that people did believe to have an opinion one way or another on it. So yeah, but we've had a lot of experience with these little people in this house. So I've had 3 different paranormal groups that have had experience with these little creatures. The first one, she thought it was a child, but she said it had a weird shaped head. So she's like, I think there's something, like it must be an injury, but it's got a weird head. The second one, I had a group. There's three of them, and they had one of those music boxes that it looks like a coffin, but when something gets within about 6 feet, it starts playing, and it was going off for like 10 minutes. He was freaking out because it's never
Wow.
worked before, and it was going off like nonstop. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're at the end of the hallway, and they're looking at the other end of the hallway where Bethany's room is, and the three of them, because I have a block, so I can't see anything. But the three of them, they all saw this little head that kept poking out of the room. And one of the guys, he's like, "Oh, like it had this weird shaped head. I think it was like a black girl, with hair." And I was like, "No, not in Jackson. It's not. Like natives, yes, Chinese, yes, but we did not have slavery here in California,
Mm-hmm.
so no, that's not it." And it's always been a very, you know, there hasn't been a lot of Africans here. So I'm like, no, I don't think so. And then the third time actually was the night of the 100 year. And that night we had two psychics here and a bunch of empaths. So it was just energetically like off the charts. But she saw something. And so she kind of like snuck around the corner. And she says when she came around the corner, she was like face to face with it. And so she
Wow.
was talking. And then she's like, yeah, it was like one of those things. And she started behaving funny. And so the other psychic's like, you need to stop it right now because she was afraid she was channeling the creature. And unfortunately, at the same time, I was channeling the grumpy lady. And so I was like, yes, you need to stop it right now. Like, because she doesn't like it when people make noise near too much. So, but yeah, so I've had now three, and she told me she's like, it was this little thing, and she said it reminded her of a Tommyknacker. And so Tommyknackers are elementals that are known to be in mines. Um, and again, we're in a mining area, so it could
Right.
be that, or again, we're on a creek, so it could be water. I mean, we could have more than one,
Sure.
but they seem to be the troublemakers because they like to steal things.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny. Well, we have this other picture too, of the door. It's the white door. He's going to put it up. Want to explain
Right.
what that's about?
So that door is in the basement. So the house is ground level and then basement. So like the kitchen is in the basement, there's an apartment in the basement, but then there's about 800 square feet of unfinished basement. And this door is in that unfinished basement. I don't know what's there. I mean, I call it a door, but it's hard to explain what it is. But I've always hated the other side of that door. Like since I bought the house, it's just like a hallway that leads it up to the main part of the unfinished part of the basement, which you can just get to from another door. So I don't know why you'd need to walk through there. But I've not liked it. I don't like. I would just stare down there like it. Nope. I want that door closed all the time. But is there another picture?
What have psychics? What's psychics? What have psychics and mediums told you about that particular?
So, yeah, it always just creeped me out. The first group I had come through, I caught the guy just, and he's a demonologist, just staring at that space. Like I came downstairs, I didn't tell them anything. I just sat there while they kind of like walked through the house and kind of felt it all out. And he was just standing there staring at it, just staring at it. And I was like, okay. So I'm like, good. He's catching on. Like these people are catching on to all the stuff I hate. I appreciate that.
There you go.
And so he said that he thought it was a portal. And I've had other people who just like, oh, yep, there it is. It's right here in this space. And
Okay, so
so,
then we have that next picture, right?
yes.
That we're going to show. Okay, and then you'll tell us. So,
So about 3 months after I lived here, I went down into the basement and I happened to have a black light flashlight in my hand. And I went down there and I saw this glowing. So this is before me. What you didn't notice in the previous, because it's like the same color, is that somebody made a cross on the door with masking tape. And so it glows in the dark with the black light, but you don't see it during the day. So this isn't just me who hates this section. This is before me. People also didn't like this section of the basement.
mm, okay, well, I'm sure there must be some sort of reason, and hopefully someday somebody will be able to come and actually tell you what they see or feel about that particular
Yeah,
door.
no, I just would like to
That's what
close
we're
it.
wanting to
I
do.
would like to have like the portal closed. I'm happy with the spirits that are here. Like we're fine. We can manage, but I always worry about, especially with people doing paranormal investigations, what they might bring in, through that space.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now we have a picture of like a
So that's the footprint. Like I said, it's tiny. And that appeared a week after I like started moving into the house. And so, yeah, you don't really can't really tell how tiny it is unless you see my foot next to it, but it's a tiny, tiny little footprint. But in comparison to that handprint, it's not the same size, you know?
And is this your the one with your foot next to it, so you can
That's my foot.
kind
Yeah.
of get a
My paint covered foot.
yeah. I say that. This next picture is with the mirror. I don't know if that happened on the same night or not, but
Yeah, so we had one of the nights of the paranormal investigations. I wasn't here that night. Actually, it was at a play down the street, and apparently they kept seeing people in the mirror, and so they took a picture. So in this picture, there's only one fleshy, and that's the one in the plaid shirt. But there are no other people in this picture. But on that bed, I see 5 people, including the woman on one end, a man on the other, and he's got his arm wrapped underneath the child laying across his lap, going in front of all of them, like to the point that I can see his hand, his jacket, his shirt cuff, and his hand underneath that child. And it looks like he's like leaning over, like kissing him or, like cradling him at some way. But none of those people are there. Like that bed doesn't have white bedding on it. It doesn't look anything like that. Like, yeah, even the bedding doesn't match what's on there. It's got a pink quilt on it.
yeah,
And
that
so
doesn't
it's like
match.
that looks like very crumpled, but it's not. It was a made bed. So yeah.
I
That,
even feel like I feel like I see faces above in the whited part of the wall. Like I
you know
see
what? I never noticed
maybe
that
it's
until today,
yeah.
I've been staring at that picture and I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't remember seeing that before.
Yeah, I feel like I see a figure of a man, and there's possibly somebody right beside
So
him.
the pink thing is a rose that's on a medallion that's on the rose on the
Okay,
wall.
so that's explained then.
But above the woman, there looks like
Yes.
there's a almost
Yeah.
skeletal figure. And then I'm
Yes.
not sure what the white that might be a
Which.
glare because there's a piece of art over there, I guess. So maybe that's the glare, the white thing up there. But yeah, I've never noticed that figure above the woman until today when you put it up.
Mm.
Yeah. So this picture
Yeah.
makes me uneasy because, like I said, I have a block. So I choose not to see spirits. I have felt them ever since, like, the first time I saw one, I was 7. And probably about the time I was in high school, I decided if I could, because I've seen shadow people that I just felt like shadow people weren't good. And so I didn't want to see them. So it's like, it's fine if I feel like the ones I felt were good, fine. But the ones I saw were all bad. So I just like put up a block so I can't see spirit. And so since I was in high school, I haven't seen spirits, even though I get flashes of information and stuff like that, but I don't actually see
Mm.
spirits. So that picture is very disturbing to me because it's been so long since I've seen a spirit, but
Right.
it kind of what I'm seeing relates to one of the families who lived here, which was the first
Okay.
family, the first woman to buy it, Maggie. Maggie Ghetto was um, Chilean, and that woman has just like dark, straight hair, which
Mhm.
Chilean woman would have. And she had 2 daughters and a son, and the son died at 2 years, 7 months. And then her husband eventually drowned in the creek behind our house. Well, further up, but the creek that runs behind our house. He drowned, but she died when she was like 44. And I don't know what from. It's not reported anywhere what she died from, but I think it was consumption. But she was she was a prostitute. She was a sex worker. So, I mean, it could be anything, I suppose. Um, but yeah, so it kind of looks like that family, which would be less disturbing to me. Because other than that, it could be I bought that furniture and it came with those people. And I brought 5 more people into the house. So I'd like to think it's them.
Join the party. Join the party.
Exactly.
Well, I'm excited because you brought a bunch of videos with you, so we're gonna run it, and then you can what was going on. So he'll put the first one on, the Bethany one. Um, I'm not exactly what order it is, but you'll recognize it when you see it, and then you can explain it to us. If Chris will do that for me, the Bethany one. I hear it coming, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, it's coming. It's
Okay, it's loading.
yeah.
We'll do them in succession. I labeled them Bethany, then Bethany 2, 3, 4, and then the TikTok one. I think it's going to be the one with the lights in the hallway. You know when you have the I think they're REM pod lights in the hallway. Elsie, do you remember what I'm talking
Yeah.
about? Yeah.
Okay.
They like REM pods. I was kind of hoping that they would touch this one right here, but I didn't tell them to. But I put that one right there in case they wanted to. All right, what's this? Oh, flashing lights. So I was asleep on that couch when this happened, and this was right after I remodeled the bathroom upstairs. So it was like a really active time, and my nieces, when they had come to stay several months before, she was sleeping in the bedroom, which would be just over to the left behind that couch. And we saw the flashing lights and we tried to recreate it. We couldn't. Like my camera moved when we were doing it, like followed us, did weird stuff. So when this happened, again, I tried to recreate it. So my real job is I work in research. So I tried to recreate it. I tried to take pictures. I tried to get notifications, all sorts of things to try to recreate what that is, and cannot for my life figure out what it is. But they do mess with electronics. Like, so that's something we know. They mess with electronics all the time. Stove won't work, the oven, like the lights turn on and off. Like, so I don't know what they did with my cell phone, what they did. I have not ever been able to recreate that.
Wow. So you have no idea where that light came from, that light.
I no, I'm sure. I think it came from my cell phone, but I can't figure out how. Because also, you notice that the little tiny, the very tight circle on the ceiling, which comes before and after, and goes way after the flashing. Like if it's like a flashlight, it starts small and goes big. So how is that tight circle on the? So it almost looks like it's coming down, not going up. You know?
He's gonna put it up again for us
Yeah, I was
now.
gonna say.
Yeah. It was really strange.
See, so it'll pop up first.
Yep.
So, yeah, usually, I said, if a flashlight, it's gonna go small where it's at, too big on in the base. So I couldn't recreate it. I tried taking pictures. I tried to do all sorts of stuff to make that happen again. Could not get it to do. And what sometimes with some phones that have LiDAR, or they use it for face recognition, but this is not a phone that it was on the back, and it's not a face. It's not one that has that because it was too early of a generation to have that. So I really researched that. I researched all the stuff to try to debunk it. So
Okay, Chris is gonna put another one up for us. That's pretty cool. How you caught that one.
So I had left a stack of Tupperware there because I wanted to see if it was recyclable, and I wasn't in the mood that day. This was right after that situation happened because I moved the camera to the other side of the room after the flashing lights because I was like, I wanted to see it from another angle. So this was right after that. So again, they're mad about me moving stuff. So I left the Tupperware there, and one night at 2:00 in the morning, I get a motion activation, motion detector, and that's what that is. So the lid fell off the Tupperware.
Is this the one this is your basement apartment?
Yeah, it's my basement apartment. So I say, when I say it's less creepy down there, it's not, it's still haunted. We still have spirit activity down there. It just doesn't have the heaviness that upstairs has. But it's still haunted. I mean, stuff happens down there all the time.
You say you prefer to stay in the basement apartment as opposed to the other part of the house where it's heavy.
For sure. Yeah, at night I would rather be down there than up here anytime.
Wow. Chris, can you put up another one for us, please?
We already told Elsie. We already told Elsie.
What was that all about?
So I had this group come, this paranormal group. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of energy. They're loud. They're boisterous. I got a lady who does not like energy and noise. So, and that was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And he texts me. He's like, "Oh my God, we were in the front of the house and this artwork came off the wall." Um, and so I think he was scared of the activity, and two, I think he thought I was going to be mad at him, and I was just like, whatever. It's it's not that big of a deal. I'm sure I bought that at Goodwill. It's fine. But yeah, so at some point in time, so they put all the REM pods and stuff around it, around the broken artwork that had fallen off the wall and shattered, and it fell down face up. Everything here falls down face up, which seems weird to me. And so they put them all around there. Well, the REM pod was going off. It was screaming. And so they went back there to check on it. And then that's when, he said, "We already told Elsie." And it seems like they're like, "No, no, 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 no." Like, and they were so shocked because it's like, "Oh, Elsie?" And it lights up. And so he's like, "They know you." And I'm like, "Well, of course they know me. Like, I'm their roommate." So yeah, they know me. So I feel like they felt like they were tattled on. But yeah, so that's why you can see there's like just a pile of equipment, and then it's behind it is broken, a piece of artwork that's broken.
Gotcha.
I'm hearing footprints over there. So
You've been hearing footsteps, really?
mm-hmm.
Well, hi, spirits. It's nice to meet you. We're talking about you now.
Yeah, come talk to us.
We're broadcasting it to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I know. I always feel bad talking about them, right? Like, I'm like, I wonder if they get mad about me talking about them, but
Well, if they seem as fond of attention that I think that they do, they probably don't mind at all, especially Stefano. So.
Well, and Fred, who likes to grab women's butts, like obviously he likes attention, right?
Yeah. Okay, Chris, you want to put up another one for us? Because we've watched 3 so far, right? I think we have.
They're getting super impatient because we promised them that we would go into the bedroom and talk to them. And so we haven't done it because things keep getting busy. And they keep reminding us that they want to talk, which is nice. She wants to talk, but it's kind of annoying. They're not listening to you. You better turn them on again. That's not what I meant. I meant the noise, not the lights.
Just to make sure this isn't, and all the questions,
Okay, so what happened there?
So that was the night of the 100-year anniversary of the Argonaut mine fire. And like I said, it was just crazy all night. And we kind of all had a lot of ADHD because, well, I always have ADHD, but they're more planned. But like the equipment kept going off. Like it was going off. That's in the hallway. And then, some point in time, there was one above me and it was going off. And so like, they just kept, it was like all these different spirits are like, "No, talk to me. No, talk to me. No, talk to me." No, like, "Hey, did you forget about me?" And we're just like, "Hey, we're trying to get this, like get it all done." Plus there was the guy who was feeling sick. Plus like all this stuff was going on. So it was kind of a really hectic night, but I just, that's leading up to that, they really kept messing with REM pods too. It wasn't just that night before that. I had another paranormal group coming out, and yeah, the REM pod would just be going off for 2 minutes straight. And it's just like, okay, that's annoying. Stop that. But I just thought it was funny when I said, turn it back on, and then the light turns on. And I was like, that's not what I was talking about. Like, but okay, because those are motion activated lights, but I didn't move. You would have seen me move. I didn't move. So it's like, okay. And the other people weren't even in the room. They were loud, but they were in the bedroom dealing with the guy who didn't feel good. So yeah, and that's why the woman came out to like look like, "Hey, what was that?"
So this is a fun tidbit of information for you guys listening in, that it can be really loud and it really doesn't matter. There can be a lot of shit going on and you can still have activity with spirit.
Well, I think that when it's loud, well, first of all, I have between the one that hates noise, and it's just a matter of having all that energy. Like they're drawing from all of that energy, right? So I think that the house is more active when I'm here. And I think it's because I have too much energy all the time. Like, this is me. I don't drink coffee. Um, and so me and my ADHD, like, they love it. And so I think that's one of the reasons why they act up more when I'm around. But yeah, that night there's just so many people and so much energy and so much psychic energy, having two mediums and like three empaths and then some other people. It was a lot on top of the 100-year anniversary.
Oh, that must have been something major too with all of that that happened. So it's yeah, extra energy for sure. I think we have one more video, Chris, if you can put that up for us, or a picture, video, or something. I can't remember what it was, but he'll put it up for us to see which one that is. I'm trying to remember.
I think that's all I got.
Okay. Oh, okay. I think it was really interesting that you said to me, Elsie, that you
You
have
have
traveled to
traveled to
other
other
parts
parts
of the
of the
country
country,
to see these fascinating,
fascinating
haunting, haunted buildings and places, and you anticipate all of this stuff to
stuff to
happen, and
happen,
then
and then
like
like
when one thing happens, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, wasn't that amazing?" And you're like, "That's
Yeah.
nothing compared to
compared to
what I have in my own
my
backyard."
backyard. Oh,
Well, I've realized, well, a couple of things. So I went to Waverly this summer, and I think it's because the one who recorded the video going, we told Elsie um, in the text conversations where I was like, hey, by the way, can you ask them not to break the Rembrandt? Because I really like that. And he's like, if anything else comes off this wall, we are out of here. And so he said that he's like, this is the most haunted place we've ever been, including places like Waverly. And so I think Waverly stuck in my head. So this summer I took my nieces with me, and we did flew into Louisville, but we drove all through like Kentucky and West Virginia, went to like Lake Shawnee Amusement Park, Trans Allegheny. We stayed at the Low Hotel across from the Mothman Museum, which is supposed to be haunted too. And we didn't really have that much activity, which again, for me, like, I can go to a garage sale and be harassed by spirits. So if there's not that much activity, it's kind of like, okay. But it's just like, yeah, people get really excited. And I'm like, this is like 7 o'clock at my house. Like, and I know because so the Jackson is gold country, and it is just notoriously haunted, all the stuff around here. So the Kennedy mine is notoriously haunted. So like all the shows have been up here. The Hotel Leger in Macaulay Hill, the Preston Castle in Ione. So these are all, and the National Hotel, which is literally a 4-minute walk down the street. So these are all been on all the shows. And when I talk to people who worked at the National Hotel, they'll be like, oh, yeah, I worked there for 10 years and this one thing happened. And I was like, one thing happened in 10 years? Like, I don't understand this. Like, because like literally, I cannot mind my own business watching TV without a door opening. So like, or the ceiling fan turning on, or, like, yeah, they turn on the ceiling fans in either Bethany's room or I have another room, and they're interior rooms. So, like, I asked the neighbor, like, do you have a remote control for a fan that maybe they were turning it on? But
Yeah.
and she's like, no. And then I started thinking about going, they're interior rooms. It probably wouldn't even work in that far into the house. But yeah, the ceiling fans turn on all the time. So it's like all this stuff just happens just like to the point you don't even think about it anymore. It's just so common. So it's just, yeah, when we went to Waverly, we had like two things happen. At Lake Shawnee, I had like two things happen. So it's like these, like, we were there all night long and two things happen. And I have people who come here, and like, I had a group who came, and there wasn't as much activity as I'm used to. Like, they did really great with dowsing rods. We were playing like a game with the REM pods where we were having them like, I'm touching the REM pod, you touch my hand, and then I let go and see how long it goes for, and like choose them or me. Like, we're playing, making a game out of it. And so like we were doing that. So we had stuff happen, but for me that night I was like, well, that's disappointing because that wasn't as active as the house usually is. And they were like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, again, yeah, because so many people, like, having one thing is a big deal, but I'm like, no, no, having like four things happen in like 3 hours is unacceptable. Like, that is not enough because I'm just so used to them. Like, wanting to communicate with us. So yeah, so I've definitely been ruined and spoiled, I guess, by it because, and I guess it's nice because I know my spirits, so I know what they're doing, and they don't affect me physically, where usually that's how I know places are haunted, because I go in there and I can't breathe, like Lake Shawnee. There was 2 people who drowned there. So there's not a big surprise when I got there. I was like, oh my God, I can't breathe. Well, like, why? I had to sit down. I'm like, why can't I breathe? And it was like, oh yeah, people drowned here. That's why I can't breathe, And the same thing at Waverly. I was like, oh, there's a spirit right there, and then next, I had to lay on the ground. I couldn't breathe, and because tuberculosis, But here, I don't have that problem, so it's kind of nice that they don't really mess with me. So it's a much safer environment. But yeah, they like playing. They like communicating for sure.
That's good. That's fun. Well, I know you've posted so many videos and photographs. You're always posting, but I would love for you to tell the listeners where they can go to watch your posts and read what you've written and all that stuff.
Yeah, so on my website, which is Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home.com, you can see some of the articles about the murders and the history, all the crimes that happened in the house. And that also has the links for booking, and also has all of the links for like media I've done, like this and Eleanor's other show that I was on as well, speaking to her last time. But I am on Instagram and Facebook, and so that's Bethany's Home Sweet Haunted Home. So those videos that were played in pictures, those come from there as well. And then I set up a TikTok page, but I'm a little old, so I'm slow to get it, but I will, which is Bethany's _HSHH, as in Home Sweet Haunted Home. And so I put together some videos there, but I have more stuff on Facebook and Instagram, but kind of everywhere. I try to put as much information. I started the Facebook and Instagram pages before I even had an Airbnb, just trying to keep a record of when my nieces were here. There was just so much stuff happened while they were here. And so I was like, I really need to keep track of this before I lose this in the 10,000 photos I have in my phone. I really need to like put this stuff somewhere. And so I started posting the videos on those pages just to kind of keep a record of when this weird stuff happens. Now, of course, that doesn't include all the stuff that happens not on camera, not on video. I don't have cameras in the house. Upstairs, they never worked. They just would break. They'd turn off as soon as I left, and then they'd break. So I don't have any upstairs. Right now, so when I had the basement apartment for me, and that's why it always looks disastrous, because I was always like painting furniture down there. So I would do all my work down there because I refused to do anything up here. So when it got dark, I would have all of my, stuff down here I can do because I'm not going upstairs. But so while I was doing all of that, when I was working on the house, I had cameras down there because that was my space. But now, since it's all public, I only have cameras in the basement, which has a lot less interesting, and because there's not people down there very often to interact with, but we still have stuff happen all the time. We had a crazy bang the other day, and we get orbs, I get lights that I don't post because I don't know what they are, and I feel like I need to do scientific. I have to go through it and figure out if I can recreate them before I would post them, because I'm like, is somebody walking down the driveway or somebody blocking the lights? Like, why would somebody just be walking down my driveway? I don't know. So and it only started like 5 months ago, and it never happened before that. So why is that? Like, but
Could be that portal.
exactly. It's right by that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm always wondering, because there'll be like a shadow that walks through, because there is one little vent. So there's a light that comes through there. So, but again, it only started like 4 months ago, maybe, like, and all of the time the cameras have been down there since May. The cameras have been down there. That had never happened until like 4 months ago. So I'm like, always like, I really need to recreate this. Does that have something to do with the time of day or this? But, and again, who's walking down my driveway? So yeah, it's hard to say since I'm not here when it happens. So I can't be like, no, nobody walked down my driveway. So I want it all to be like, I have researched this. I am not feeding you garbage. Like, I don't like to be wrong. I'm one of those people who need to be right, and so I refuse to post things that are wrong or incorrect. So yes, I have to do some research on that. But I mean, we still do get stuff that happened in the basement, or like, sure, that's not orbs, that's dust. But why is there all of a sudden a dust storm just kick up in the basement? Like, how does that happen? Some stuff like that still happen in that the ugly unfinished part of the basement.
In that part of, yeah. Hmm. Well, thank you. I'm so glad you decided to come on here tonight so we could actually show people visuals, and it was really fun. I'd love to have you back again sometime.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. Of course, I always say I can talk about this house all day, every day, because
Yeah,
they give me lots to talk about.
it sure sounds like it.
Well, thank you very much for having me tonight. Thank you, Chris.
And thank you, Techie Chris. We couldn't do it without you. If you liked listening to this week's episode and you're into all things paranormal, check out my other show, Eleanor Wagner's Strange and Scary World podcast, out of the Paranormal UK radio network, which is available wherever you get your podcasts. You can catch the show with Elsie Lodde on there too. I'm really excited to announce my new book, Sussex County Hauntings and Other Strange Phenomena Part 3, came out on Halloween. Get your copy in time for the holidays. They're great stocking stuffers. If any of you are interested in reading any of my books, you can find the links to them on my website, authoreleanorwagner.com. I write about the history of the town and location, add the paranormal story to the mix, and finish it all off with photos and evidence. And if you're looking for something unique, this Petite Itala is a 33-card system based on the 18th century picket deck, offered in collaboration with Rose Moon Grotto. This is a self-published oracle deck featuring antique playing card art with cards that have multiple meanings depending on the positions and pairing. Much information can be obtained from a relatively small amount of cards. They come packaged in white tuck boxes. Electronic meanings and instructions are provided with the purchase, and they sell for $34.95. If you're interested in purchasing a set in time for the holidays, you can email me at authoreleanorwagner.com to place your order. Viewers, tune in on Thursday, December 22nd, when I will be interviewing paranormal investigator Joe Shortridge at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And stay for a while and listen as Alexander Nakarada, his soundtrack, takes us out for the night.
I hope you've enjoyed this little journey down my own personal nightmare alley. If you're one of those people who experiences the paranormal and has stories of your own you've been filing away over the years, I want to hear about them. And if you're a part of a paranormal investigative team, even better. I'd love to have you on my show. Got a questionable photo? Send it in. Would love to have an open discussion here amongst the professionals. Reach out to me at authoreleanorwagner@gmail.com. Enjoy our soundtrack music, Headless Horseman by Alexander Nakarada, promoted by freestockmusic.com. And remember, no ghost story is better than a real-life ghost story. Until we meet again, make sure you're creeping it real.